Welcome to Project-Based Python. These tutorials will not cover Python basics in depth. If you need help with the basics, you can try PyLearning Companion. It is a Python study app that covers all the core concepts in short lessons, then tests your skills with hundreds of activities. PyLearning Companion is available on Android and iOS. You can find the links in the video description. Today we will create a short number guessing game that makes use of loops, if statements, and user input. We will also look at simple error handling. Our number guessing game will ask the user to guess a number between 0 and 10. We will then compare this number to a preset answer. If the user guesses correctly, they win the game. We will start with a simple version of the game that allows the user to guess as many times as they want. We will then limit the user to 3 guesses. Let's get started. The first thing that we need to do is create a variable that will hold the number that we're trying to get the user to guess. So we'll call this variable answer, and let's set it to equal 7 for now. We then need a while loop, so while true. A while loop that will continually ask the user to guess the number. So we will save the user guess as guess, and it will equal input. And for the prompt, we will just enter guess a number between 0 and 10. Okay. And now we need to compare this guess to our answer. So if guess equals answer, print you got it. And we also need to break out of our loop. We should also create an else statement to make sure that it covers wrong guesses. So else print try again. Okay. At the end of the while loop, I will just have one more print statement, and this one will just say game finished, just so we know that we're done. So I'm going to run this now, but it will not work as expected. So let me show you what happens here. If we run this, we get guess a number between 0 and 10. Now we know that the answer is 7. So if I type in 7, it should say you got it and then game finished. Let's see. So I type in 7, hit enter, but we get try again and we go back to the beginning of the loop. Now the reason for this is that here we're comparing a guess to the guess to the answer. The guess is actually a string data type because anytime we get user input, it is saved as a string. The answer up here is an integer. So what we're really comparing here is the 7 that we get from the user to the 7 that is the answer. These two values are not the same because here we have a string, here we have an integer. So we actually need to convert this guess to an integer. So let me just stop this. And here we will do int guess. So what happens here now is we take the guess that the user inputs, we convert it to an integer, and then we compare that guess to the answer. So if I run this again, and we know that the answer is 7, so if I type in 7, we get you got it and game finished. Now that we have a functional game, let's break it, and I will tell you why in a second. So first, we need to run this again, and let's say that I'm a user who doesn't really pay attention to details, and maybe I'm not a very good listener. So here we have a prompt that says guess a number between 0 and 10, and let's say that I just type in a letter instead. So if I type in the letter R and hit enter, our program crashes and we have an issue here. The problem is, as we can see in line 5, and that is right here, we have a value error, and the value error, this code right here just tells us invalid literal for int with base 10, and then the letter R. So what this is telling us that we have a value error, and it's happening right here, because we have the guess, which is a string that the user enters. Now, if this is a number, it'll work perfectly because we can turn that string into an integer if it is a number. But the letter R does not hold an integer value, so we cannot convert the letter R into a number. So this is causing our crash right here. Now Python allows us to get around this very easily. We can use something called the try statement. So here's what we need to do. We type in try and a colon. Now I am going to indent this. So now I need to indent this for this to be inside of the try statement. Also notice that down here we have a little red line that tells us that the try statement is incomplete. That is because every time we use the try statement, we also need to have an exception, a way to handle an exception. So what we need to do here is say except, and then we handle that exception. So we can say print, please enter numbers only. Okay, and if we run this now, so let's go back to being a bad user. So we will say guess a number between 0 and 10, and I will just say no. And now we get please enter numbers only. The program no longer crashes and we can continue playing. So I will just type in 7 again and we get you got it, game finished. Now this exception here currently covers any issue that we might face in this try block. And that is not the best way to handle this. When you have a larger program, you might have other code in here that might cause a different kind of error that we might not be able to predict. And if that error occurs in here, then this exception will handle that error by just printing please enter numbers only, which is not exactly what we want if something else is wrong. So to prevent the exception from just responding the same way to all of our problems, we can actually specify the type of exception we're expecting here. So we will say value error. And if you think back to the initial crash that we had, it said there was a value error. So now the except value error will only handle value errors, which can only occur right here because we're typecasting guess from string to integer. So again, if I run this, it will look exactly the same as earlier. So I'll just say no again. Please enter numbers only. 6. Try again. 7, and we are good to go. Now that we've handled possible errors that can cause a crash in our program, let's add a limit to how many times the user can guess. Because right now, if I run this, we can just keep on guessing as many times as we want. And as long as we don't guess correctly, the game is going to go on. So if I guess correctly, we are done. So what we're going to do now is we are going to create another variable. We'll call it count, and let's set it to 0. Now instead of saying while true, we're going to say while count smaller than 3. So here we're getting into a while loop, and while is going to check the value of count every single time we start the loop. So it is going to start at 0, and right now we're not increasing it. So here at the bottom, I will say count plus equals 1. So now every time we go through the loop, count is going to go up by 1, and if count goes up to 3, this statement will no longer be true, and the while loop will just end on its own. So now I will also have a print statement down here, just to tell the user how many times they have guessed. So let's make this a formatted string, and we'll say you have guessed count times, actually time, and then we'll put the S in parentheses because it's not always going to be plural. Now let's run our program and see what happens. So here we have guess a number between 0 and 10. I will say 3. It says try again, you have guessed 1 time, so we don't need the S there. Then I'll say 4. It says try again, you have guessed 2 times. Let's say 9. And now it says try again, you have guessed 3 times, game finished. So this is not great, right? Because we now have guessed 3 times, and instead of saying try again, this should say game over. We should say you have guessed too many times, something like that. So let's go into this else statement here, and we are going to check the value of count. So we will say if count equals 3, actually 2, right? Because it starts at 0, it's going to go to 1 and 2, and if it gets up to 3, we will actually get out of the while loop. So if count equals 2, print you lose. okay? And the other print statement should go under else. So this will look a little bit better. Let's try this. We have guess a number between 0 and 10. We will go with 3. Try again, you have guessed 1 time. 2. Try again, you have guessed 2 times. And 0. And we have you lose, you have guessed 3 times, game finished. Okay, so now this is starting to make a little bit more sense. Now let's add one final feature to our game to make it a little bit nicer. Right now, if we give this game to somebody and they play it, they eventually figure out that the answer is 7. They can now guess the answer every single time. They can guess it on the first try because they will know what the answer is. So instead of the answer being 7 every time, we can actually get a random number and assign that random number to be the answer. So that way, every time you play the game, the correct answer will be different. To do that, we actually need to import a library from Python. So we need to import random. And now instead of saying answer equals 7, we're going to say random.randint. And randint stands for random integer. And in the parentheses, we need to pass in the range of numbers that we want to, where we want the random number to fall. So we want it to be between 0 and 10. Now 10 is included here, so this can be anything from 0 to 10. And to test this, let's just print out our answer. So print answer. And if we run this, we see that the answer is 1. So I'll guess 3, and then I'll guess 1, and we get you got it, game finished. Let me run it one more time. Now it's 3, and everything works the way it's supposed to. Now this random library here, currently we're importing the whole library. So we're importing random, and then from random we're getting randint, and then passing in the range of numbers. Instead of doing random.randint, we can change the way that we import this. So we can say from random import randint. And now what we're doing here is we're saying from the random library, we want to import the random integer. So we don't actually need to say random.randint. We can just say randint 0 to 10. And if we run this now, we still get, so right now it's an 8. Let's do it one more time. This time it's a 0, and everything works the way it's supposed to. So finally, we want to get rid of this print statement because we don't want to give away the answer. And now if we run this game, this is a proper game because right now we have no idea what the correct answer is. So I will just go 0, try again, 1, try again, I guess 2. And yeah, I didn't get it, I lost, and I have guessed 3 times. So everything is working the way we want it to, and now we have a fully functional number guessing game. Let's make one last change to our game. So down here we have the count going up by 1 and the print statement that tells us how many times we've guessed. We actually don't want that to be down here because if we run the game, we can see, a user maybe typing in a letter and the count goes up, even though this shouldn't really count as a guess. We don't really want to punish the user for maybe accidentally typing in a letter. So let's close this. And this is a simple fix. All we have to do is just cut this part. And we will place it inside of this else statement. So now if we go through our code, we are checking if the guess equals the answer, and we don't really care about increasing the count here because if the guess equals answer, then we're done with the game and we close it. We break out of the while loop. Otherwise, so if the guess does not equal the answer, we go into the else statement and we handle all of this here, and then we just increase the count and display how many times the user has guessed at the end. So let's run this. And I will just type in 1. We have try again, you have guessed 1 time. Now I'll type in a letter, so let's go with Y. We have please enter numbers only, and now let me guess again. So 1, and now we see that we have guessed 2 times. So the Y was not counted as a wrong guess. So I can keep typing in letters, it doesn't do anything. And then if I guess one more time, so let's just go with 6, we have you lose, you have guessed 3 times, and the game is finished. If you have enjoyed this tutorial, make sure to like and subscribe, and make sure to check out Pi Learning Companion. It is available on Android and iOS. The link is in the video description.